South Carolina loses 31. You know what? Let's just start it over. South Carolina gets their blank beat 31-7 by Vanderbilt. Is the sky falling? I don't know, but we have our instant overreaction post-game starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I hope everyone's having a fantastic Sunday. I don't know how you would be. I'm not. I know that. And that's all I know to say right now. But we still have a show to do, nonetheless. Thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to every day. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Pepper's out back. She is roaming around. I'm in the living room because we got NFL action on that I have to cover. Let's talk about it. I'm pissed. I'm embarrassed. There's so many words to use, none of them positive. I try to say this over and over and over again. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be a sunshine pumper. I want to be as objective as possible. And objectively speaking, you got the crap kicked out of you last night if you're Shane Beamer and the South Carolina team. There's a lot that happened that I don't think happens if LaNorris Sellers if he's healthy. If there's some things, calls go certain ways or whatever. Pepper says hello. All of that is fine to say, but that's not why you lost. That's not why you lost. You lost because you weren't the better team. And what was the scariest part of all of it is not that they lost, it's that everything came crumbling down almost immediately around it. There was no composure. The lack of focus. The game plan, the play calling, there's so many concerns to have after this game. And I don't think the sky is necessarily falling. This team is still good enough to beat Kentucky. They're good enough to beat Kentucky with or without LaNorris Sellers. I think they're good enough to beat Coastal Carolina in November with or without LaNorris Sellers. They might be good enough to beat Clemson in November with or without LaNorris Sellers. I don't think his injury is going to be that lengthy, obviously. But the concern is when something like that happens, the fall off was catastrophic. And even when he was in there, you weren't the better football team. And that's what's frustrating. It is little things like when you are going into drive, like you're going into score, and they bring a double safety blitz, both people coming in, an exotic blitz, great call from Clark Lee, and then drop the nose tackle, and LaNorris doesn't see him, and he's got two guys open. Layer a pass to the intermediate route. Hit what's his name in the back of the end zone. You could have scored on either. It's an interception. The moment Sellers went out, the game changed, but it didn't change because South Carolina didn't have South Carolina was the worst team then. They weren't the better team before. And that's what's concerning. We're going to get into numbers. We're going to get into stats. We're going to get into what we saw with our own two eyes, for me, and talk about all that because it's not good. It's not good, and it's very, very frustrating. I don't think the sky is falling. I also do not think that this team, from what we saw last night, is capable of reaching some of the goals that we thought at the start of the year. I could be totally wrong about that. I hope I am. But seeing what happened last night, seeing them fall apart, seeing like the lack of composure, not just from Beamer, but like Dylan Stewart and it just wasn't good. But let's start with the fact that you got beat by a better team. And let me explain this, for what I mean. South Carolina is a more talented football team than Vanderbilt. South Carolina has more talent than Vanderbilt. But you didn't just lose. You got the crap kicked out of you at home, 31-7. A 16-year streak snapped at the hands of a good football team. But that team, it was so blatantly obvious and clear what they were able to do better than you, and it'd be based on coaching. It'd be based on doing the little things to win. I brought this up about Vanderbilt a ton last year. That one of the biggest misnomers about this Vanderbilt team and this program from last year was that the win they had against Alabama was a fluke. And I said it on here before the South Carolina game a year ago. They went into that game and they beat the crap out of Alabama, like physically beat them. They owned the lines of scrimmage. They were constantly in third and short, and they converted a lot of those. That's what you saw last night. But you saw it against a team that didn't have the same kind of offensive firepower that you had a season ago. Like, we talked about going into this game, and I am all over the place because watching this game made me feel all over the place, and like there was just so many things that happened that were like, oh my God, it's not one thing that got you beat. It's the collective things, the collection of things that got you beat. And like, maybe this is a game you throw stuff out and you're like, oh man, well, like, that won't happen. It got away from you quick. But even before Sellers goes out, there were concerns, right? Like I said before the game started, or before Saturday, throughout the week, the things that you have to do to win this game, right? And we talked about it. Obviously, turnovers. This team is much different, and this program is much different when they win the turnover battle. You were going to have to, though, like more importantly than anything else, I kept saying, you were going to have to figure out a way to not be in second and long, third and long, and keep Vanderbilt from being in third and short. I was in a press box in Baton Rouge at the LSU Florida game, watching this game on my computer. Safe to say I was the only one in the LSU press box glued to their laptop watching the South Carolina Vanderbilt game. It was so painfully obvious from the get-go. Like I prefaced that by saying, like, yeah, there were some things I missed, but you had 4 turnovers last night. That was one of the keys we said. Vanderbilt had 1. And it was a Pavia interception that gave you the slightest glimmer of hope and shouldn't have. It shouldn't have. You had this game, and this, by the way, this is the instant reaction. We're just going. We're not. There's no ad reads. We're just going. Like, we're just going. Probably should have done this live, but we're going to have to do it on Sunday because we got home late last night, and I didn't. If I would have recorded last night, they would have probably fired my ass because of the language that I probably would have used. My point is, from what I was saying before, the turnovers, the turnover thing, 4 turnovers to their 1. Yeah, you're going to lose that football game 9 times out of 10, especially with what we've seen from Beamer. 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose that football game. But what Vanderbilt did to you was the same stuff we talked about beforehand. Time of possession, getting you in third and long. I don't know if I watched a single second down where it was 9 yards or shorter. It felt like every single time they got first down, second down, it was second and long, second and 12. At one point, South Carolina was 1 of 7 on third downs, and the 1 of 7 was they were averaging 11.1 yards to go. That's not a recipe for winning football at any level. At any level, that is not a recipe for winning football. I just, it's frustrating, and I tell you what, like the Sellers thing is you can toss that out and be like, well, of course, this game got away from him, but it was getting away from you. It wasn't getting away from him before he got injured, but like, it shouldn't have been like this. It should not have ever been a 24-point loss at home to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a very good football team. But all the things that you had to do to win this game, you didn't do any of them. You didn't do any of them. Like, what is the bright spot from this game? Like, what is – I'm trying to look. You hit a bunch of different receivers. Harbor had 4 for 66. Murph, 2 for 34. Vandravius, 2 for 30. Mazio finally shows back up, 2 for 20. They get him involved. That's great. Like Jerry Brown, 2 for 15. Brian Rowe, 3 for 13. I'm having a hard time understanding why only one of those guys is having any sort of explosive play around. We talked about that. You got to be more explosive. You've got to figure out a way to be more explosive on offense and in the passing game. Like, these are all things that we talked about beforehand. The defense wasn't great, but like, I keep going back to the fact that Vandy did all of the little things you need that good teams do, but to win football games, and South Carolina didn't. And that's where the concern is. I love seeing Beamer get fired up. I love seeing him get pissed off about how ridiculous and egregious it was to blow a play dead that Nick Harbor probably walks into the end zone on to review a targeting call that you didn't see. You didn't see that? Like, how's that possible? What are you? How? It's so bizarre to me, the discrepancy between NFL and college games, the lack of care they have for quarterbacks. Like, targeting gets called a ton, way more than it probably should. But targeting gets called, like, they don't protect quarterbacks in college football. They do that to the nth degree in the NFL. If you see LaNorris down, withering in pain, don't you think that during that you might want to review it? Like, wouldn't you want to review it while he's down? What else could you have been watching? So, yeah, that part's frustrating. But it's only equally as frustrating or maybe less than the interception that he threw. Then Vanderbilt hitting a 51-yard field goal. Then Vanderbilt being able to convert a 3rd and 21. Like, what broke your back wasn't just the Sellers injury, right? Harbor going down right after that wasn't great. What broke your back was, man, on 3rd and 6, as they're trying to drive to go, and I think it was tied at the time 7-7. Like, when it's 3rd and 6, missing tackles to allow them to get a first down. Again, 3rd and 21. You needed to get off the field, and you couldn't do it. And at one point, Vanderbilt came out, and it was 3rd and 2, and they dropped back to pass, and it was an incomplete pass. And I thought to myself, this is the difference between these two teams, because I was begging for a punt, praying with all my might that Clark Lee was going to say, you know what, we could probably – we've been running through their face all night. We don't need to punt here. But maybe we'll play it safe. Maybe. No, of course he didn't. He dropped his blank on the table and said, we're going to run through you. And they did, and they converted another first. I don't blame Luke Doty for looking a little bit, out of sync or scared. But I also, what I do blame is if you're down by 14, maybe it's time to open the playbook a little bit. Maybe it's time to go into a situation and think, maybe we need to air it out. Maybe we need to try and force something. Maybe we need to go down swinging. Like, maybe any of those things would have been better than getting your ass handed to you at home and not just having a 16-year streak snapped, but a 24-point loss where you mustered nothing offensively after the first drive. Even when LaNorris was in, your first drive, 7 plays, 75 yards, you're on script. I don't know, Mike. Coach Shula, I think you know way more about football than I ever will. I don't think that's a crazy thought or a secret anyone has. Maybe just go back to the script, brother. Like, what are we doing? 7 plays, 75 yards. The next 25 plays they had go for 98 total. You're going 3 and out constantly. Let's see here. Yeah, Mason Love, you only punted twice. You only punted twice in the night. I don't even know how that's possible because you had so many turnovers and then you're behind by so much. They did all the little things. I said this when they beat Virginia Tech. When they beat Virginia Tech, I made the comment that, listen, it wasn't the score that made it impressive. It was you're down by 10 at halftime, and the adjustments that they made. They held the ball for 22 of the final 30 minutes. They held them to 21 yards of offense in the second half, and they ran the ball down their throat and did all these things that good teams do and made halftime adjustments. It wasn't the 44-20 score. It was the halftime adjustments. And maybe like I'm sorry that I was so positive going into it to y'all. Like maybe I should have seen more of this coming, but it just felt like there's clearly enough talent on this team to win this game. If you told me Vanderbilt was going to win, I'd believe it. I could see it. Like they're a good football team. Vegas tried to tell us all week, line opened up 8.5, closed at 2.5. Like you could have convinced me that they were going to win this game in a hard-fought, evenly matched game. I thought this was the most evenly matched game in the SEC this weekend. But 31-7 would have been a tough sell for me. That would have been a tough sell for me. And watching that for 60 minutes was, it was tough. It was tough to see. And it's like, I think that it's time to do some very, very serious self-scouting, top to bottom. Because now the question, I don't think the sky is falling necessarily, but the question now becomes the confidence in that room, like the confidence in that locker room. It wasn't a great win against South Carolina State offensively, right? But this is what it looks like if you can't get a defensive touchdown, if you can't get 2 punt returns for a touchdown, like you're not in it. We've seen 4 games from Mike Sewell's offense, 17, 17, 17, 7 points. You can make the excuse this game if you want, which is fair to him, that, you had a backup quarterback. Did Doty look like he was prepared as a 6th-year senior? Did he look like he was prepared for the moment? I don't know. I do know that the moment he got in there against Vanderbilt, the moment it was 14-7 with Doty coming in, it was worrisome. 21-7 felt like it's over. And that's a scary place to be, not being able to come from behind like that. So I don't know. I think the confidence that's shaken, and I'm assuming it's shaken not just with the fans, is now if you're being objective and looking at it without trying to panic necessarily, but if you're being objective, you beat South Carolina State, you beat Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech was close going into the fourth quarter. You were able to pull away. It was close going into the fourth quarter. That Virginia Tech team is 0-3. They just fired their coach. Now there's rumors that your coach might go there. We'll do a whole other show on that. But you're 0-3. They're 0-3. That's the big win they have. And that is not good. It's not good. And so I think that from the top down, the self-scouting that needs to happen for Missouri, because Missouri is a really good team. Offensively, they're really good. I don't think I'm saying anything that's news to anyone that's watching this. South Carolina will not beat Missouri without LaNorris Sellers. They also will not beat Missouri with this kind of effort on Saturday night. Let's go over some numbers here, okay? Because I said this over and over again. There's no way the offensive line could get worse. I don't know if it is. It's not better. It's not better. And at some point, maybe we look at the fact that Lonnie Teasley is a hell of a recruiter. Love that he went out and got people like Darius Gray, and he's getting some other people and putting this Great Wall of Columbia or whatever. Get it. But maybe it's time to also look at, Sean Elliott as your offensive line coach and have Teasley stay on to recruit. I don't know. But what's happening now is not working, and it hasn't been for 3 years. This very much now starts to become you cannot waste a potential top 10 pick at quarterback because you can't figure out a way to prevent him from getting sacked 40 times. You're last in the SEC in sacks allowed. 8 so far through 3 games. That's the most in the SEC. It's the most in the SEC. Like, what other numbers do you want to know? Like long scrimmage plays. Oh, 13th in the conference. 13th in the conference in plays over 10 yards. 11th in the conference in plays over 20. 14th in plays over 30. Like, I don't know. How about tackles for loss allowed? People getting in the backfield nonstop. Oh, second to last with 20. 20 in 3 games. In 3 games. Like, and you haven't even hit the full SEC schedule yet. I don't know. You came into this game as one of the only teams in the country, 23 total teams in the country, that did not have a turnover allowed. Like, not a single one. You had 4. Like, what do good teams do? They get off the field on third down. You gave up a 3rd and 21. Oh, and by the way, you're 14th in the league, giving up almost 44% of third downs. Like that's not going to get it done. Well, I don't know. How are they doing offensively in that category? Oh, second to last at 31%. Like, I don't know where to begin with. You have arguably the best offensive player in the country at quarterback. You have arguably the fastest player in the country at receiver. You've got all these weapons that you brought in. You went and got a top 50 recruit at running back and also have Attaway and some other great players. You got a great tight end room. You brought in all these freshman receivers. You are dead last in the SEC in yards per game at 303. That's 42 yards less than the next closest team. You're dead last in the SEC in yards per play, 5.19 yards per play. You're the only team in the entire conference that doesn't have over 1,000 yards of offense on the season. And you played South Carolina State, 0-3 Virginia Tech, and then Vandy at home. How is that possible? Like, what is fundamentally wrong with the offense if that's what's happening? I mean, total offense is 118th in the country. 3. That is the 4th worst of any Power 4 team in America. I remember sitting on this show last year after the Ole Miss loss, and it was 6 games in. You're halfway through the season. You're 3-3, and I'm opening up the stats, and I'm like, they rank bottom 5 in every major category. There was clearly still time to turn it around then. There's clearly still time to turn it around now. But you ranked bottom 5 in every major category, and then you finally made some adjustments. Are we going to see adjustments? Because, again, if not, then you start looking at this thing from a standpoint of it feels like you have a potential massive failure on your hands with the talent that would be wasted for what you have here. I'm not there yet. I'm not going to say this team still has enough talent and hopefully enough fight to go through this schedule and go win games that we thought you're going to win. Maybe Vanderbilt is also really, really good. But here's the thing. Virginia Tech is really, really bad. South Carolina State is also not good. At some point, you have got to sit here and figure out a way. You got to sit here and figure out a way to make an adjustment, whether it's scheme, play calling, whatever. What's going on the first drive of these games? You scored against Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech. The first drive went right down the field. What's happening the rest of the way, man? It has to get figured out. Because if it doesn't, the rest of this season, I don't care if you get these games at home, you're not going to beat Alabama. You're not going to beat Oklahoma. You're not going to beat LSU on the road. Like, You got to get this thing figured out and figured out quick. LSU's defense or offense is pretty bad statistically. Defensively, they might be the best in the SEC, if not the country. And that's the issue this team is facing. Like, you have to get this thing figured out quick. Because, again, you're going to Mizzou this week. And we kept talking about getting out of the month of September undefeated. That clearly isn't the case. Now you need to make sure you get out of the month of September with a winning record. But if you're not at 4-1, the anything that you had on your list of goals to start the year, they start falling off by the wayside. I don't think there's anybody watching this right now that believes this is a playoff team. They're still good enough, and they have the schedule in front of them. Talent-wise, they're good enough to get there. But this is what we saw last year with what Dowell Loggins able to do offensively, and he was able to turn it around. You got to have that flip that switch has to flip now, like. And I will say this as I'll end on a positive note. You were able to do this last year after the Ole Miss game where they came in on your field and whipped your ass in the 27-3 win. You were able to do that. But you've got to figure out a way to be better at every single phase. And most importantly, you got to figure out a way to not let stuff like that happen where everything gets away from you. And the moment the adversity hits, you fall apart, because that's what happened last night. And losses happen, but that is inexcusable. So I hope they get it fixed. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Maybe we'll be more calm. I don't know. But until then, I appreciate you guys. And until then, go Cox.